The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NFL Big 3 in 30. The 3 biggest stories in the NFL from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NFL Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in the NFL.
Abdul Carter is still the number one option for the Tennessee Titans.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast.
We got word on Wednesday night, late in the night, that the medical evaluation found an issue with Abdul Carter. He had what was being called at the time a stress fracture in his foot. And of course, everybody's freaking out. I'm getting tagged left and right. Now they can't draft him, blah, 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 blah. It was weird because some people who want the Titans to draft a quarterback were almost celebrating that this young man got injured before the biggest moment of his professional career. Very weird stuff right there. But regardless, we wake up in the morning and we get more realistic, positive news. He has a stress reaction in his foot. He is not going to have surgery. He is going to participate in his March 27th pro day at Penn State, and this is not expected to impact his draft stock whatsoever. So, in my mind, I have absolutely zero doubts about Abdul Carter from an injury perspective based on this information. I had people telling me, oh, this is 2 things now. He had the shoulder. Now it's the foot. Look, is it ideal that there's anything medical? No, I can admit that it's not ideal. But also, the overreaction is what's killing me. You're telling me that if a team had this player as the number 1 player in the draft, the best player in the draft, that this issue is going to prevent them from taking him number 1 in the draft? No. And you look at some recent examples here. Julio Jones had a foot issue coming into the combine. Julio Jones turned out all right. Derrick Henry had a Jones fracture, which is far worse than a stress reaction. You don't got to be a doctor to know that. Derrick Henry bounced back all right. Now, you can find examples of any particular injury throughout the history of the NFL of this guy, the injury, it didn't work out. Okay, great. And you may say to me, well, Derrick Henry and Julio Jones are freaks of nature. Well, if you look at Abdul Carter, you might be able to say that he's a freak of nature. Also, I find it absolutely hilarious that some of the reaction to this was the Titans can't draft an injury-prone player. Abdul Carter missed 0 games in his college career. Literally never missed a game in his entire career. He had a shoulder injury during the college football playoff, and he still dominated. Like, I'm sorry, but I think it is insanity that if, presumably, the Tennessee Titans had Abdul Carter in their mind to take with the number 1 overall selection, that this would somehow delegitimize that. Also, some people are saying, well, now they have to go quarterback. Which to me is the most insane reaction of them all. And let me tell you why I think it's insane. To say, oh, well, now Abdul Carter's hurt. You got to go quarterback now. Before Abdul Carter had this medical concern, quote unquote, now I'm not saying this is what the Titans think. I'm not telling you that this is the way that the Titans think. I'm just presenting a scenario based on what has been presented to me. A lot of you guys saying, oh, now that Carter's hurt, it's got to be the quarterback. Well, that implies that it's close, that you got Abdul Carter at 1 and Cam Ward at 2, and now there's a medical issue, so Cam Ward should be 1. If the Tennessee Titans have Abdul Carter at number 1 and they have Cam Ward at number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, why aren't you taking Cam Ward anyways? If you have a quarterback that closely ranked to a pass rusher, if a pass rusher and a quarterback are even, if a quarterback is just slightly below the pass rusher, you always take the quarterback. So this Abdul Carter medical concern, if it impacts the Tennessee Titans' decision, It won't be, hey, we were going to take Abdul Carter, but now we're going to take the quarterback. If you like the quarterback enough to where it's that close, you should be taking the quarterback anyways, because quarterback is so much more important. If they're close, you always go QB. The reason you would go Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter over one of the quarterbacks is because it's not close. Because you have Cam Ward at 10, 11, 12, 15, 16, 17, and Abdul Carter at 1. That's why you take Abdul Carter over the quarterbacks. If it's close, if Cam Ward is in your top 5 players and Abdul Carter's number 1, you need to be taking the quarterback. It's not even close. So to me, for people acting like this Abdul Carter injury now means that they should pivot to the quarterbacks, that doesn't make any sense, because if they like the quarterbacks that much anyways, they should be taking that quarterback regardless of the injury or the medical concerns or any of that. If it's close, you take the quarterback. The thing is, if it's not close, this Abdul Carter injury wouldn't make you then bump up the quarterbacks. This isn't a teeter-totter. This isn't a seesaw. You know what I mean? This is not a Libra scale. When Abdul Carter goes down, that doesn't push the quarterbacks up. It would push Travis Hunter or Armand Membo or, one of the position players up. Because by having Abdul Carter number 1 and not being willing to go quarterback, you are already admitting that you don't like the quarterbacks enough. So the logic of Abdul Carter getting hurt makes the Titans more likely to draft a quarterback. I don't buy that thought philosophy. It doesn't make any sense to me at all. Because if it's close, you should be going quarterback anyways. And if it's not close, then you shouldn't be taking that quarterback anyways. You should pivot elsewhere. And quite frankly, if there's any impact on the Titans, I think this makes the Titans more likely to trade down now, because Carter is inherently a touch more risky with the medical concern. So rather than pivot to players that you don't believe in, that makes the Titans, in my mind, more likely to trade down. And then if it goes quarterback, then you could take Abdul Carter at number 3 while having more picks in your back pocket, which eliminates the risk. Or you just take Travis Hunter, a guy who I think is going to be a star player in the NFL.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting, whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3. I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Friday night NBA action boasts a variety of lines to get in on. The Nuggets 1-point favorites on the road against the Pistons, who have won 8 straight. The 2 best teams in the East face off in Boston, where the Celtics are favored by 2.5 over the Cavs, and the Clippers 1.5-point dogs in their crosstown showdown with the Lakers. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Defensive linemen, linebackers on the field, working out, running 40 times.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Croc, I see a question in the chat about some speed rushers. This is from OKM30 in the chat. It says, Salah's defenses always have a speed rusher. Ford with us, McDonald and Huff in New York. Who fits that mold in this draft? And I've been kind of wondering if a speed rusher could be a top priority for the 49ers in this draft. And I've kind of gone back and forth on it. And I've kind of been the same thing with Will Johnson, right? The Michigan corner, Will Johnson.
Yeah. Will Johnson.
Will Johnson. Will Johnson. Did Robert Saleh draft that way in New York because those were the players he wanted? Or was his GM drafting the players that he thought were the best and said, here, Robert Saleh, use these players. So, Sauce Gardner being a high pick. Would Will Johnson, the Niners don't pick corners high. The highest DB they've ever drafted was the last pick in the second round last year in Renardo Green in this entire regime. Speed rushers. They've liked bigger, powerful rushers in the past, especially with the high draft picks. And so I wonder if that's what they're shopping for. They want a little bit more juice, a little bit more speed, but you're in luck because there's a lot of those in this draft, Croc. So let's go over some of those. We got to highlight two of them who are the stars of the first workout day of the combine. Two players that we have watched that we liked some of their game, didn't like other parts of their game. They're on our big board, and that is Shamar Stewart out of Texas A&M and James Pierce out of Tennessee. Probably the biggest star of the day, the biggest winner of the day of the workouts, and it shouldn't be a shock based on how he plays and just based on what we heard about how he's going to work out, is Shamar Stewart. And what's interesting to me, Croc, is Shamar Stewart got way down in weight because he wanted to run fast, and he did run fast. 6'5", he's still pretty big, but he was 281 pounds at the Senior Bowl. That was just a couple of weeks ago. That was, 3 weeks ago? Less than 3 weeks, right? And he was down to 267 pounds at the combine today. 6'5", 267, long arms, 34 and an 1/8 inch arms. So that's all prototype stuff. And then threw down a 4'5'9" 40-yard dash, which I believe is now official. 4'5'9" 40-yard dash, a 1.58 10-yard split, which is really fast. Anything under 1.6 is really fast for a big player like that and a defensive lineman. 40-inch vertical and a 10-11 broad jump. And Croc, can you guess what his 3-cone was?
6.87.
That would be phenomenal. He didn't run his 3-cone because I don't think it would be that good. He didn't run a 3-cone. Everything is linear with him. He did all the explosive stuff. He didn't show any of the lateral stuff. And that's my big question with him. And everything is like is straight line with Shamar Stewart. And will he be the 49ers cup of tea? I don't know. Did he solidify himself a top 10 pick in the NFL draft? I don't know, because I kind of already knew that and I already saw that stuff on tape. You don't want to overrate it, but man, that is some prototype workout stuff, And I've seen the Clowney comp for him, and that is kind of Clowney territory workout stuff. But here's the thing, Croc. And I was on live with Aponte a little bit earlier, and I asked him the same question. Okay, let's take Jadeveon Clowney, take away a little bit of the power and explosion, then what do you have? A backup.
Because Clowney physically was just more dominating coming out, but he still had a lot of work to do, even though he was just a super, super freakish athlete. So if you take away, like, you're not as freakish as Clowney, and then now maybe you're not as strong, or you're not. Yeah, Clowney in the NFL, he was solid, and he continued to have opportunities. He got paid a lot of money, but he didn't quite live up to what you were expecting. He didn't quite develop that other aspect to his game. And I mean, he spent the early part of his years playing opposite JJ Watt, and still I don't think capitalized on that the way that you ideally would have liked to, especially for someone who was the number 1 overall pick. So
now you don't have to take Shamar Stewart number 1 overall, but you might have to take him number 11 overall, Croc. Does this change your opinion on maybe taking a shot at a guy with this much athleticism, even though he's only got 4 sacks in his career?
No, because I think the combine should be to just check off some of the things that you think you're seeing. So, I mean, if you see something there that you didn't know you would see, then all right. But all right, you ran, sub 4.6, good athlete. Like, does that give you any better pass rush moves? Like, those are the things that we want to see you improve on. Does that give you any better, just kind of speed to power? Or, I mean, maybe you say, we could take this athlete and develop him into something, but I don't know. I mean, shoot, that's what the 49ers drafted with the kid from Georgia the other year, right? I mean, that was a tall, long 4.4, okay, develop him, a guy you drafted in the 5th round, not someone. And there's development at every position, but like at pick 11, you're expecting to see somebody that's going to come in, and you're hopeful that he's going to be a little bit more impactful day 1. I mean, how great of an athlete was I don't know why I can't think of his name. Number 2, Solomon Thomas. He was a good athlete. Like he was really good at. He had good size, good athlete, but he was kind of like this tweener. Like, what do you do with him? Because he's kind of like has the athleticism of an edge, but he is not an edge. But then he's a little bit. He's not really big to be a 3 tech, and you got to add weight to him. Like, and it's like, well, we could, and it just did not work out. So that's tough. I would like to, if I'm picking out 11, I would like to draft someone knowing what I am getting from him in a positive way. Like, okay,
Yeah.
he's this. Now, if there's various reasons as to why sometimes guys end up being bust or it doesn't work out, but let me just feel a little bit more comfortable as opposed to having a lot of questions about this guy when I draft him, knowing like, well, he's a great athlete though. Like, nah.
James Pierce, as pointed out in the chat, might be one of those speed rushers for the San Francisco 49ers that could be there. And to be honest with you, I hope Shamar Stewart stock did skyrocket to the point where he goes in the top 10 before the San Francisco 49ers, because that'll push another player down to the 49ers. Because I have some concerns about Shamar Stewart, and I do think that there's some issues with him that are not going to be fixed in the NFL, like him being able to turn the corner and keeping his feet and having any sort of a counter or a move at all, or he just has nothing at the top of his rushes, even though he has an immediate advantage with his explosion and his burst off the line of scrimmage. Another guy with burst is James Pierce, and he's another guy that we're like, I think you and I have Shamar Stewart, not counting any quarterbacks, and there's some other prospects we haven't watched yet, but Shamar Stewart's in our third tier of guys, like in the 20s somewhere. James Pierce we have a little higher in the second tier, but those guys are neck and neck, and they're very tight. James Pierce showed up at 6'5" and a quarter, 245 pounds. So just as he was listed in college, and ran 4.47, which is blazing. And, but he was one of the lighter defensive linemen at the combine, but he was the fastest defensive lineman at the combine. He ran a 4.47 40-yard dash. He had a 1.56 10-yard split. His jumps 10.3 broad jump, but he only had 31-inch vertical. Now 31-inch vertical, if you're 6'5", you're doing windmill dunks. That's an athlete, right? But compared to a 40-inch vertical, you might even expect a little bit more explosion from a guy like that. And I think that I think with the vertical and the broad jump measure a little bit more is more how much power do you generate, right? And that's one of the questions we had when we're watching his film. So to be honest with you, I think his combine workout, and guess what, didn't do the 3-cone. There's a guy that did the 3-cone I want to talk about next. But I think it basically kind of solidifies everything we saw in his tape, right? Just from the few things we saw in the workout. And
we knew he was a great athlete. Like he was good in space, great athlete. Like I think he's more of a 3-4 outside linebacker.
And by the way, he was looking good in the field drills too. The wave drill where they have him go sideline, this way, and then he makes him run. I mean, he's smooth. He's an athlete, but he's built like a huge wide receiver too. So that's, that helps. Does he have the size? Does he have the frame to get up over 250 pounds? You see a little bit of speed and power on his tape? Can he do some more of that more regularly? I don't know. Is he a fit for the 49ers? I would question it. I bet the 49ers like Shamar Stewart a little bit more because they do like the bigger, more powerful guys that have the get off. But both these guys do have that get off the line of scrimmage. So I can see the 49ers liking both of those guys. For me, 11, I think they're just behind 11 for me, Croc. And I think they're still there for you because the combine confirmed what we already saw on tape, right?
Yeah, it doesn't move me at all. I think 2016 Eric Crocker, maybe it moves me like, wow, like, man, freak athlete, develop them. And like, I'm a little wiser now. You can't fool me. And that doesn't mean that you're not going to be a good football player, but it's just, I like to look at someone that I just feel like has a little bit more complete game. Like if you told me the 49ers drafted the Nolan kid, all right, like, because I feel like I just know what he is. Even if I don't even know what he tested like today, but I just feel more comfortable with that because I know what his game is. And what I would be trying to look to see is, does his athleticism meet the kind of like the athletic threshold that I would have for that position? And I would like to see that because I feel like, okay, well, I know this threshold kind of translates better to the NFL, but I know what his game is, and I'm just more confident with that, how we could fit in with the 49ers.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting, whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three. I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Friday night NBA action boasts a variety of lines to get in on the Nuggets. 1-point favorites on the road against the Pistons, who have won 8 straight. The two best teams in the East face off in Boston, where the Celtics are favored by 2.5 over the Cavs, and the Clippers, 1.5-point dogs in their crosstown showdown with the Lakers. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Things are getting spicy in the Myles Garrett saga.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast.
The Myles Garrett saga has reached its latest chapter, its latest twist and turn. They keep on coming like a soap opera. And in this time around, it comes in the form of basically the Browns extending an olive branch and Myles Garrett swatting it away. So on Wednesday night, Mary Kay Cabot of Cleveland.com, she reported that the Browns are willing and preparing, if you will, to offer Myles Garrett a contract extension that would make him the highest paid defensive player in the game. She referenced it being upwards of $40 million a year. That would surpass, I think it's Nick Bosa or Joey, I think one of the Bosa brothers, I think maybe Nick, who has the highest contract for our defensive player in the game right now. And it would leap that. It would surpass that. And rightfully so. The Browns keep saying they want Myles Garrett to be here. They're willing to make him the highest paid player. They were always planning on giving him an extension. That much we do know. They've made it very clear that he is part of their future plans. They see it that way. And so it's not a surprise that this would sort of come out. This is usually the time of year at the Combine. Agents are in town, all these different things, where Andrew Berry gets to sit down, talk to agents, start, talking shop a little bit and getting a sense of like, does your guy want to come back with us? How can we work something out? This is the early stages of what's going to happen on March 12th when the new league year opens. They begin here in Indy. These are where the conversation started. Some of the logistical things start sort of coming to fruition. And that's no different from Myles Garrett, a player who's already under contract, but that they do want to give an extension to. So Barry is trying to sort of smooth that over, trying to get Myles Garrett back on board. But the problem is Myles Garrett has said, this is not about money. And I have said, and I talked about this, I think last week, all these shows, they're blurred together at this point. I've been doing so many, and being here at the Combine and Indy, all the days blur together. So I forget which day it was. There was a day where I said, I think it was last Friday actually, how ugly would Myles Garrett actually make this thing? I think there is a cutoff point for him where it's like, I don't think he's going to slander Cleveland. I don't think he's going to slander Browns fans. He's not going to do what LeBron did, even though he's consulted with LeBron and like smear it in on his way out the door. He wants to go be traded to a contender. He's trying to do that as cordially and professionally as possible. And so he's requested this trade. But the how ugly he makes it is sort of dependent on what the Browns do and how far he's willing to go to get out of Cleveland. He has said he'll do whatever it takes. I think there is a tipping point at some point, but we haven't reached that obviously yet. Now, where this twist and turn adds some spice to the equation is because I've brought up the idea of like, how does this get resolved when you have a player who it's not about the money? Like some guys don't show up to training camp and all these different things because they want a contract extension and they want to be paid their worth. That's not the case with Myles. He doesn't care about the money. He wants to go play for a contender. And so if the Browns are trying to entice him to show up to off-season programs, show up to training camp, I openly wondered, like, does a contract extension even get that done? Like, is he even willing to sign it? Why would he sign up for giving the team more leverage over him when he wants to control what he's doing? He wants to control where he goes right now. That doesn't make any sense. And so this is basically now we get our first evidence of how they're handling this because you got the report of the Browns wanting to give him a contract extension on Wednesday, and that parlayed into Thursday where you get Myles Garrett's camp saying, yeah, we're not negotiating with you. They have basically completely slammed the door on any sort of contract negotiations, any sort of contract talks. They don't want it to happen. They don't want to get it done. They do not want to be part of the Browns, and so they're not willing to even negotiate with the Browns on what they could potentially be doing, or what their plans. Like, they don't care. They've drawn their line in the sand, and this is them digging their feet in deeper and saying, we don't want to do this. We want to go somewhere else. That's been made very, very clear time and time again. And now they're making it clear yet again for the, third, fourth, fifth, however many times. I don't know how many radio shows you did on Radio Row, but they're making that clear yet again. And so, as I said the other day, this is the fascinating part of all this, because I don't know what this means next. I wondered out loud how you get somebody back on board when they don't want to be there and it's not about the money. Like, a lot of times money fixes things in the NFL. You throw money at a guy, he's back on board. You throw money at a guy, he shows up to training camp. You throw money at a guy, he's happy again. He gets the morale boost and he's playing at a higher level. All those different things. That's not what Myles wants. And so if your plan for trying to resolve this is just throw money at him, there was never a guarantee that was going to work, and it doesn't sound like it's going to. So what's next? He's going to skip the offseason program. I'm already assuming that. He's going to skip veteran minicamp. I'm already assuming that. Does he, I said it in that episode. Like, does he skip training camp? Does he skip a whole season? Is there a way to get him back on board and be like, why don't you start the season with us? And then if things aren't going great, we'll trade you the trade deadline. Like, what is the solution here? If a guy does it, if it's not about the money for a guy and you still have control of him, but you're sort of playing hardball, but he's playing hardball right back. And listen, it's early. It's February, the counter's about to flip to March. So I'm not saying like they're going to work all these things out right now, or they're not going to figure it all out right now. What this even, if there even is a relationship to salvage at this point. So there's a lot that can happen. But with the off season or the start of the new league year less than 2 weeks away, like, this thing is as volatile as it could be right now. One side's digging their feet and saying, we're not negotiating. The other side's saying, we want to bring you back. I mean, Kevin Stefanski went as far on Thursday to say, and I played you the clip, like, we envision him as part of our team in 2025. We envision him as part of our team next year and the year after that and the year after that. Like, they continue saying, and Kevin Stefanski reiterated it, they don't have any plans to move him. They want him to be a Cleveland Brown, and they're going to do whatever it takes, it seems, to make sure he can stick around. But if whatever it takes is being a championship contender, I don't know how you put lipstick on that pig and turn that around enough to convince him to stay. I mean, this is truly a problem. It's a bit of a soap opera, but this is why I'm so fascinated, because it's unlike any scenario, any situation we've ever seen in the NFL. Because most of the time, again, these situations are born out of a contract that's expiring, or a player that is just disgruntled because they don't have any more guaranteed money in the deal and they want an extension. They want you to add a couple years on and pay them, give them what they're worth, match the market value for a certain position. That usually is the case, and that usually solves all your problems. It doesn't sound like it's going to fix all the Browns' problems in this instance. So who wins the standoff? Who ends up winning? Does Myles Garrett hold out long enough and stay away long enough and make this thing as uncomfortable as possible to get the Browns to eventually just concede or bend the knee and say, all right, that's it, we'll trade you? Or do the Browns just keep on pointing and saying, you're under contract, you're under contract, you're under contract? And this, to me, like, all of this stems from, I think Andrew Berry is trying to save face. He knows right now he is linked to being the GM who made the trade for Deshaun Watson, the worst trade in NFL history is how it's being labeled. He knows that because of that trade, because of his inability to build a competent roster around Myles, that he's now pissed off Myles, the second best player in franchise history. And he also knows that if he trades that player, then it's the trifecta. It's three things that are just like inexcusable for a GM to be associated with. So he's trying his damnedest to make this thing work. And what's interesting is, like, again, those Stefanski comments where he says, like, we envision it as part of our team in 2025 and beyond. The way they talk about this, they make it seem like there's a path forward, like that they know something we don't know, that they know they've had conversations with Myles where they know, like, hey, if we get a quarterback, you'll be back, right? Like, but every step of the way so far, everything they've said, everything they've done. I mean, Myles used Andrew Berry's own words against him from what he said at the end of season press conference. Like, it doesn't seem like there's a getting back on the same page scenario even in this, like, baked in this at all. Myles seems dead set getting out of Cleveland and ending this relationship, ending this partnership, going to a contender. And it doesn't seem like there's anything the Browns can do to change his mind unless they were able to somehow overhaul the roster and end up with like Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow or something completely outlandish that's never going to happen. So again, I'm fascinated to see this. The fact that this next sort of narrative or this next sort of chapter of this whole thing played out here at the Combine was interesting, and it's worth talking about because we will document this thing every step of the way, of course, as it continues to unfold.